Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video or podcast is for those people who have their natal sun in conjunction with their natal Neptune. And how does that play out in terms of the personality? Because the sun really is the core of our personality traits. And I am going to title this podcast, Who Are You? Because there really is that sense with somebody who has this conjunction of, how do I look at myself? What is my identity? And this can be something that, depending on what signs are part of this conjunction, and I'll go into what a conjunction is in just a second, in case some people don't know what it is, but, depending on the signs involved, and usually it will be the same sign, it can play out differently. And I don't think enough astrologers talk about that, but I really like to take it to that level because I think that this is one of the reasons why some people say astrology doesn't work, because I'm like, I'm a Taurus and they're saying that I'm supposed to be this way and I'm really not. And they're not looking at the bigger picture. Or actually, I'd say a deeper level, like where is your sun in Taurus? Maybe your sun in Taurus is in the 8th house and it's very into deep stuff. And maybe you have a conjunction with Neptune in that 8th house. So you're very psychic and you're not as materialistic as they always say Taurians are. So it's very important to know as much as you can about astrological positions and things like that, so that you can see how it all plays out. So conjunction is when two planets are usually in the same sign and within close proximity to one another. I can't say exactly what the exact degree span is, because it does differ between two planets. I mean, it's not going to always be the same. A very tight conjunction would be if they are within a couple of degrees of each other, I would say. But sometimes in some of the combinations that I have seen, 10 degrees is sometimes considered a close enough span. Now, I don't know about conjunctions. It's going to vary depending on the two planets involved. For instance, I'm looking at one of my clients' charts and looking at their sun and Pluto, and it's considered a conjunction. And the sun is 3 degrees of one sign, and Pluto is 12 degrees of that same sign. So that's a 9-degree orb, or difference in degrees. And that's considered acceptable. So I'm sure that, I think with the moon, it's very, very close, maybe because the moon is very fast moving. That's my guess. But in any case, we'll just say you can look, in order to find out if you have a conjunction, go to a free site like astro.com, which is what I use because I like the chart generator they use. It's very clear, and I like to see charts that are very easy to read, and you can see for yourself if your sun and Neptune are considered officially in conjunction. You may just think that because they're in the same sign, they're a conjunction, but that's not always going to be the case. However, you may still identify with what I'm about to say, so it really doesn't matter. And one more thing to note is that they don't have to be in the same sign. You could have your sun at 29 degrees of Aries, and you could have Neptune at 2 degrees of Taurus, and they'd still be a conjunction. And you might say to me, well, what does that mean? Like, how, the flavor of this conjunction? Is it Aries or is it Taurus? And I would say that it would be more of an Aries thing, because Aries is a more overpowering sign than Taurus. So that would be if it's on the cusp, I would look at which sign tends to have more of an overt effect. So in general, the sun is the sense of ourselves, our identity. Identity is kind of like one of those words that is hard to really pin down because our identity can change. What we think, who we think we are when we're 18 might be different. And I think almost hopefully it's different than when you're 38. So you may base your identity on things that you no longer feel are the case when you're older. And one of them, especially when you're very young, is your looks. And some people can really get far on their looks. And it opens a lot of doors for them. I just read the autobiography of Leif Garrett, and he was a real heartthrob in the late 70s. And I was of the age that I should know more about him, but I was a Sean Cassidy fan. I think there's a lot of people probably under the age of 40 that have never heard that name, Leif Garrett. But I just found out that he's got the sun and the moon in conjunction with Neptune. And when I was reading his autobiography, some of those themes came up. Absent father, because the sun can relate to the father. So having that conjunction with Neptune can be that the father is this mythical character because Neptune brings fantasy touching that sun, so that the person is very fantasy oriented. Somebody who has the sun in conjunction with Neptune. This means that they can be very artistic and, imaginative and also spiritual, as I stated. But on the other hand, it can make them prone to living in their own reality. And because the sun represents the father, when you have a conjunction like that, the person may not have a relationship with their father that is a realistic relationship. Maybe the father, in Leif's case, came in and out of his life, visited him a few times in his life. But I think he's taking care of him now. So he is, probably in his life permanently, but I'm saying when he was growing up. And so what happens in those cases is that the child, and we're talking about a male child who's looking for a male figure, is trying to decide who this person is. And sometimes, that's kind of traumatic. They may invent this fantasy of what that person is doing when they're not there, and feeling like, to make themselves feel like they're not being abandoned. And also to feel that the person isn't a failure or isn't that person, because they're identifying with that person, especially if it's a boy with his father, and if that father is not there, that can be even more of a loss. And so this kind of thing can lead to that general sense of not being in touch with the reality of a situation. And so when you're looking to an authority figure to give you your sense of self, and you don't have that, it becomes even harder to find one on your own. And this is another thing where this kind of person, it's very interesting because they really don't need a sense of self in a strange way, because Neptune makes the person very sacrificial, makes them selfless. The sun is the self, so when it merges with Neptune, it loses itself, and that can be troubling if the person is a Capricorn sun sign. Maybe because Capricorn is a very ambitious sign, and ambition is, self-oriented. It's not about being ambitious for everyone around you. It's like you want to get ahead. So that kind of thing can create a lot of conflict within a person, depending on what their sun sign is. And for other people, it can be very easy to get lost in all of that. For instance, if the person is an actual Pisces, which is the sign that is ruled by Neptune, it's right up their alley. So they can, be very sacrificial. And this can even include the type of career that they go into. So, for instance, somebody who is, working in a charity or working as a social worker, who is concerned with people who are, at a disadvantage in life. Those kinds of things can be quite fulfilling for somebody like you because you're you're like a gentle spirit, and it's just part of who you are to surrender to a greater cause. And so that's the other thing, is being able to see the bigger picture in life. And so when you were younger and people were so ambitious, maybe in college or even in high school, and they were just trying to get ahead and get into the perfect college and stuff like that, and you might have been like, why is everybody so driven? What is the point? The point is to help others. It's not to just do something for your own self-aggrandizement. That's the kind of way that somebody like you thinks. And, because of that intuitive ability and being able to read people energetically, it's second nature. It's something that you can even do as a living, as part of your life goals. And as I said, becoming an artist, becoming something that deals with the creative side of life. And so people with this conjunction have to be very careful about intoxicants of any kind, because escapist tendencies are very strong. And one of the main reasons why this is because the person is so sensitive that life can feel very harsh. Now, it's interesting. I just want to give a shout out to two websites that I went to peruse to just see what they said and, take notes from. One is called the Astrology Place Membership.com, and the other one was, I believe, cafeastrology.com. But, they talk a lot about the aspect of, how the person is very psychic and, sacrificial and all that stuff. But I think that one of the most important things is about that sensitivity. However, it can really mimic some of the other positions. Like if I look up the moon in conjunction with Neptune, I'm sure I'm going to get very similar things, even more so because the moon is connected to the emotions already. But the sun, I would say that the person is particularly vulnerable if they don't feel that they're living up to a certain image. So, and if, for instance, their father or any kind of authority figure that is important to them is very forceful in their lives and wants them to do certain things career-wise that they may not want to do, I think that would make them more susceptible to substance abuse later on because they feel like they can't be who they came here to be. Or they may not even know who that is, but they know that they don't want to do what they're being told to do. But they can be under that person's spell because, Neptune with that contact can make that person seem, they can be overly idealistic about the father or the stepfather or the grandfather or whoever that person is, that has a great hold on their life. This makes them very idealistic about males in general, about, male authority figures. But I'm trying to see here if it would have to be like a male, role model type of person. But there's not, it's interesting because they don't assign gender to the person with this conjunction, like who has that. So I guess they're saying that both male and females can be susceptible to this. And that is very important to note, because for a male with this conjunction who is looking for a male figure, that's going to be who they want to grow into. So to me, it's more aspirational. With a girl or a young woman, it might be more of the type of man that she ends up getting involved with. So this may be the case of a woman who, of course, happens to be heterosexual. And not all women are, but the ones who are, who grows up and is a little bit too influenced by males and needing to be, maybe acknowledged by them, or just feeling like they have all the answers. So we see women who do this starting from a young age, and they're looking up to, and so they become very vulnerable to males who are very controlling and all of that sort of thing. And it would be very hard for them to see those abusive traits because they're under that spell, that Neptunian spell. And so it's important for you to be very careful about how you interact with mind-altering substances. This can run the gamut. I would say with Neptune, especially depressants, are something that are appealing because they kind of tamp down the emotions. They don't heighten the emotions. They kind of dull them or, numb them. But anything that puts you into a different state of consciousness artificially should be really watched out for, because you have those vulnerabilities in that area because you're already like that. It's like you don't even need that to, go into different states of consciousness. Speaking of which, this can be somebody who is a very, that they're actually doing some sort of work along the lines of being a spiritual leader in the community, as a profession, because the sun can really talk about your profession, even though there are other elements in the person's chart. The sun can certainly do that. So this can be, because the sun, can be that sense of being at the center of things. And this is in a spiritual context. And it depends, obviously, on other factors, whether this pans out, whether this is a good idea. The person has to be aware of how they have a tendency to view life, I would say, because they're going to be the leader. But I don't think that somebody with this combination is necessarily a charlatan, because they're not doing it for ulterior motives. It is just part of who they are. And so they are very selfless. When you're talking about people who are charlatans, a lot of times the ego is very strong. The ego is not strong in this combination. And that can be a liability, though, because the ego is not necessarily bad. The ego, in its stripped down form, is simply the sense of self, the sense of yourself as an individual. And you might say, well, why is that important? We shouldn't be individuals. We should all just be one mind, or we should just be like all merging together. No, it's both. We have our individuality, and that's what contributes to the expansion of life, because we're coming from different perspectives, and these perspectives are necessary. No one has the exact same perspective. Even people born in the same family do not. They all have their own unique take on things, and every single one is important for the uplifting of our consciousness. So even, when we talk about it in different terms, like being an artist, we need individual voices. We don't need copies of other people. Whether it's somebody who is a philosopher, we need different ideologies, not just one. We need diversity of experiences. That's what adds to the richness of life. And I feel like these are people that are really ultimately probably harder on themselves than they could ever be on somebody else. And so if you have this conjunction, find healthy outlets for your immense, spiritual connection that can really help others. And you can even combine that with art, like spiritual art. And also just in general, how you help others in the community, how you are able to, I use this term with trepidation, but hold space. In other words, just with your aura, just with who you are, that gentleness, that generosity of spirit. We need more sensitivity in this world. We need more people who are not just in it for themselves. So don't ever second guess yourself. But there is a need to, I think that defining yourself is not a bad thing, because there can be like an evasive quality with somebody who has this combination, similar to like a Pisces individual. And there's like a slippery quality to Pisces in general that I would also see in this particular combination. And that's because the sun is so central to who we are, that other people may pick up on this type of person, that they don't have a strong sense of self. And they may see that as a reason to not trust such a person. And so in some cases, it may be the case where the person is deceptive and not necessarily intending to be, but simply because they may not be able to distinguish fantasy from reality. I shouldn't keep saying they instead of you. Maybe I don't want to say the harsh things directly to people that are listening. But there has to be more of a firmness within yourself, that you can take some of those good qualities, but leave the ones that don't serve you. Don't ever be a copycat. Don't sacrifice for somebody unnecessarily so that it becomes enabling another person. And, don't disregard your own needs, because the sun, or disregard what you came here to do, because you feel like you're a people pleaser, or you simply are, you don't know. I think that sometimes maybe these types of people are playing a game with themselves, that they are confused and they don't know what they want to become. But the truth is that if they stepped into what they really want to do and how they want to express themselves in life, that it would upset those around them in some way. And that might be 100% true, but you have to do you. And that's kind of what the sun is about, doing you, honoring yourself. That's another thing, the dignity of your life and things like that. So, in any case, I hope that this resonated and that you received something from this. If you would like a private reading, this is the kind of analysis that I do, and I'm very into this particular angle of, natal charts, interacting with natal charts, because I think it's fascinating myself. But in any case, the link is below, and thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.